Welcome to Podcasting for Financial Professionals. I'm your host, Virginia Elder, podcast manager and founder of Podcast Abundance. If you're a financial pro ready to increase your authority, get more visible, and generate leads for your business by hosting your own podcast, you're in the right place. This show gives you real stories, expert advice, and connections that make podcasting for business simple, strategic, and sustainable. This week, you get to meet Linzy Bonham, host of the Money Skills for Therapists podcast and owner of Money Nuts and Bolts, where she helps private practice therapists get their finances in order and change their relationship with money. With Linzy's courses, therapy business owners learn the systems and key numbers that build a thriving practice. She's really generous in this interview and shares the behind the scenes of how her webinar funnel works, how she uses her podcast to get people into that webinar funnel, and how she fills her courses to the brim. Seriously, I'm talking multiple six-figure launches. And, of course, we talk about the mindset around selling, launching, and Evergreen webinars versus live ones, and changes she's made with her podcast because of the business phase she's in right now. She says that in the end, it doesn't really matter if you're a top 2% podcaster. What matters is if your show is driving qualified leads and helping you reach a larger audience. If you're focused on creating a podcast that converts, this is your invitation right now to go to the link in the show notes and get your free download, the Podcast Conversion Blueprint. That free PDF walks you through the key components of converting listeners of your show into leads for your business. There's much to take away from this fellow money nerd and financial professional. Enjoy the interview. Hi, Linzy. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited to hear a little bit about your journey of how you got here. I know you started out focused on therapy,
Yes.
but then things took a little turn.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Sure. So I'm a social worker by training. I, went into social work as a true bleeding heart, wanting to, help people and help people heal. And because my own experiences with therapy being so helpful. So I went into the field and very quickly got into very heavy therapy. I'm a little intense. I'm quiet, but intense. So as a therapist, my specialty became complex trauma and dissociation, so mostly working with folks who were abused as children. Dissociation is what used to be called multiple personalities sometimes. So it's very complex work, really rich, really meaningful work, but hard work. So I was doing that work and stepped into private practice to do that work, was enjoying it. But then found when I got into the business space, I was like, okay, and now I'm going to learn how to be really good at business. I've become really good at therapy. And I found so little information on how to actually run a healthy therapy business, the business side, the financial side. I remember looking even for how do I have a great filing system? I was really I wanted to get an A+ at, running a therapy business. And that information wasn't out there. And so I found that I ended up kind of piecing together my own systems for financial tracking and filing and, kind of muddled my way through for a little while. But definitely had a passion and an interest in this area. It was a problem I was trying to solve. But then I was talking to my colleagues and started to hear more and more that they were oh, no, I'll never go into private practice because I hate the money side. I don't want to have to think about taxes. I just want to be an employee. I want to get paid. So I saw these really talented colleagues of mine who were often in organizations they weren't happy in, but they felt like they didn't have what they would need to actually start their own private practice and be able to step out and work on their own terms. So, I think, Virginia, whenever you see something that you enjoy and are good at and other people around you struggle with it, your people struggle with it, there's an opportunity there. So I started teaching finances to therapists, really honed my own systems, turned around and taught those systems and the mindset pieces of money to therapists, where this is an extremely taboo topic. Lots of shame and guilt and fear about money, and the fact that even money exists is very worrisome and troublesome to some therapists. So started teaching my course in 2018, Money Skills for Therapists, and eventually have made that into my full-time thing. So I now do not practice therapy anymore. I retired 3 or 4 years ago now, and I just now teach money to therapists.
Okay. So coming from the financial space, I'm very well aware that there's financial therapy and that, it's really beneficial if your money person, let's say your advisor or your money coach, kind of also can at least refer you to a therapist or have some kind of partnership with a therapist. Like, so much of it goes hand in hand, but it's just this awkward space to be in because you're educated, you've passed all these tests, you have this great, let's say, social media profile or YouTube channel or this business. You're advising people, maybe you even have a team. But then on the inside, you're like, I make emotional decisions with money too. And, there's decisions that I've made that I wouldn't want to say out loud or that, just so there, everyone deals with this. Just because you are a therapist or a financial professional doesn't mean that you're immune to these issues.
And I think often too, we go into a certain field because there is something compelling about it for us, right? Like if it was just like, meh, that's so easy, there's nothing to talk about, we probably wouldn't stay in that field very long because it'd be very boring, right? So like most therapists go into therapy, like I alluded to with myself, because they've gone through therapy, like they've actually experienced the healing that therapy gives. And with money too, I think most folks who are drawn to the financial sector, and I include myself, now teaching foundational finances to therapists, it's because there's something compelling to be worked out there, right? So rarely do we go into it because it's meh, easy. We go into it because it's rich and challenging, right? And there's all this possibility, but there's also so many opportunities to make mistakes and not be in alignment. So I think it's absolutely normal that we end up in fields that are kind of like a bit juicy for us, to put it a certain way. But also there can be that kind of shame of knowing that we're not really walking the talk, or that, yeah, as you said, maybe we've made decisions that we wouldn't tell our clients about. Maybe a little bit of like, do as I say, not as I do. And that can create a discord for us, as professionals. And this is one of the things that I talk to my students about, my therapist and health practitioner students, because in addition to having like maybe some shame about not knowing how to manage money, they might even be conflicted about taking money for therapy at all, right? Like we have this other layer that is put on us as therapists and health practitioners of like, well, shouldn't you just be helping people because you're a good person, right? Like, because they need help. And like, why are you charging $130 instead of $30? Right. And so like, there's also this additional layer for therapists. Like not only do they maybe feel like a hot mess financially and they're like, oh my God, I'm such a mess and I haven't saved for taxes, and that's stressing them out and that's in the back of their mind. But they also have this like guilt of like, oh God, this person's having financial hardship and they're telling me in therapy because it's a problem in their marriage. And now I'm going to tell them that I'm raising my fee by $30. Like, how am I even going to do that? So there are so many layers that we experience around money, both as professionals and individuals. And we kind of all have our unique soup of stuff going on, where there's, of course, my therapy and coaching lens would be where there's so much opportunity to, unravel and unpack and release, because all this stuff creates a lot of noise for us internally. And it distracts us from our professions, but it also distracts us from really enjoying and being present in our lives.
I agree very much. And that same pressure that you were talking about for therapists, I feel like a lot of money coaches and people that help in the personal finance side, especially if you're helping recently divorced women or single moms or like whatever niche you've chosen, if that tends to be a lower income niche and you're trying to help them out of debt or out of a bad situation, that same pressure is there as like, how can there be financial coaches that are charging $4,500 for something when I feel terrible charging this woman $100? It's like that same inner conflict, which your courses help therapists work through. And I'm sure that any business owner would probably get some great tips out of those courses. I don't think it's like you're not a therapist, you can't come in, but even a personal finance, let's say a money coach or someone that's starting their practice would get a lot of value out of your courses as well.
Yeah, so I have two courses that I teach. The first is Money Skills for Therapists, and that's the one that I started, off the side of my desk in 2018. And the second is Money Skills for Group Practice Owners. So both of those courses are about this blend of the giving you skills and insight around the emotional pieces of money. Like, what are your stories about money? Do you believe that really you shouldn't be charging for the work that you do? Because you're going to have to work through that belief, right? Before you can actually really start to be strategic. Because a part of you, and this is therapist language, parts work, a part of you is not on board, right? A part of you is conflicted about even charging, money to that mom who's recently divorced or whatever. So all my courses balance the emotional and practical aspects of money because they're so salient. And what I learned really early on, Virginia, is if we don't create the space for folks to process the emotional pieces of money, they can't learn. And from a therapist perspective, one way to understand that is when we are in stress, our survival parts of our brain are on. We're no longer like, in our thinky brain. We're in our like, oh God, I'm in danger. This is going to happen and I'm going to end up living in a box and my family's going to be poor. We spiral into all these different directions. And so your thinking brain is actually not available when you are activated, whether you're filled with shame or anxiety or stress or fear or guilt. Our thinking brain is not fully online, so we're not actually even able to think and understand and learn. So once we can start to identify those stories and start to bring down the charge around those stories, shift those stories. Maybe we end up having some new stories. Maybe we're like, you know what, that's actually my dad's beliefs about money, and I'm not going to hold those anymore. Those made sense for him given where he came from. But like, I didn't flee Europe during the war. That was his life. It wasn't my life. So being able to unpack those things clears up your brain to learn. So in Money Skills for Therapists, we teach the foundational skills to have a successful solo practice. So this would apply to anybody in a service-based business, right? If you're doing one-to-one services where you're exchanging time for money, basically, or like maybe a package of your time for money, that is the course that is at that type of business, directed at that type of business. So we teach you how to understand what's happening with your finances, commit to a system to actually make it work, really clarify exactly what's happening in your numbers so that you can then what I call adjust, which is budgeting, making changes. That's the hard part. It comes later to actually make the numbers work. Because for all of us, there's equations that work in our business and there's equations that don't. And all of us have totally different needs related to like your schedule. How many clients can you see? Do you have 3 kids at home? Are you single and just like ready to work your butt off because you're saving for a house? Like we all have such different situations. So Money Skills for Therapists is about taking people from that confused, overwhelmed place with money to clarity and confidence. And that's my solo practice course. The group practice course was developed because as I was teaching more and more therapists, I realized that group practice is its own can of worms and it is way more complicated. So the group practice business model would also apply to many folks, again, in the financial sector, where you have somebody working for you. Maybe there's a split. They do a session for a certain fee. The business keeps a certain percentage. They get a certain percentage or they get a certain wage. And what I have learned with the group practice model is that it's basically like a machine that you build. There's all these variables that fit together, right? And if you've built a piece wrong, sometimes the numbers will never work. Like your whole team could be full to the gills. You could have more sessions than you could ever imagine, and you still won't make money because the machine's not set up right. Right. So that course is about helping people understand their numbers, what's actually been happening. I find so many folks, Virginia, don't have clarity on like what's actually happening with your numbers from month to month, how much came in, what did you spend on what percentages were those, what was left. So again, we go through that clarify stage, but then we also clarify the actual roles in the business. Like, okay, you have 5 team members. Some of them see 3 clients a week. Some of them are seeing 15. There's overhead that applies to all of them. We have a tool called the team tool, which is our Cadillac tool. It's like this incredible spreadsheet that I built with my partner who works with me, and that helps you understand the profitability of your different positions, right? So like this person who's seeing only 3 clients, but their share of the overhead means that it costs you $700 to have them working for you before anything happens. You might actually be losing money on them, and having that clarity just allows you to make decisions about, okay, what actually works for the business? What is your sustainable business model that actually allows you to keep doing this work? Because ultimately we want to build businesses that can keep going and that aren't going to like crash and burn.
How has your experience been over the years marketing these courses? What has worked? What has failed? Can you give us some insight to like the back end of how do you get people in your course? Because I think that's a big question out there these days.
Oh, it's a huge question. Yeah, and that's really the first major investment I made in our business is when I went on mat leave when I was pregnant with my son. I'm Canadian, so I took a whole year of mat leave. It gave me the time to think about what I wanted to do, and I realized I want to come back to just teach finances, but also the business has to grow massively to make that work. So that was the first major investment I made when I got back from mat leave, which was investing in a course that helped me build an evergreen funnel. Right? So we have an evergreen funnel for our solo practice course, and that funnel is a webinar funnel. So, our different opt-ins that folks get, if they get a freebie, a free PDF, and we have probably half a dozen of those by now, if not more. I have some free workshops as well, like a free 1-hour taxes workshop. Like some of my opt-ins are meatier to really give people a taste of what it's like to work with me. But the door to enter our course is to watch the webinar. So once folks take that action, then it's basically like the door to the course is open to them for 5 days. So this has been something that I've had a lot of like ethical questions around over the years, and I'm happy to talk about that. But it gives people the experience that they are being launched to, but everybody's on their own timeline, right? So like, let's say, Virginia, like you get a free opt-in, you see a Facebook ad or you see me present a workshop in another community that you're in. And I'm like, hey, I've got this guide on paying yourself a regular paycheck. You get that guide. You have a few days to read it. Then you're going to start getting emails from me that invite you to watch the masterclass. And when you watch the masterclass, your 5-day timer starts that day. So then you'll get a sequence of emails over the next 5 days, giving you the opportunity to join the course. And then the course will close to you after those 5 days. You won't be able to go back to those sales pages. It's manufactured urgency, which again, I've had lots of feelings about over the last, 6 years that I've been doing this work. But ultimately that funnel has made us more than $1 million at this point. So it's easy to have your ethical qualms, but at the end of the day, when it gets people into the course, and I know I have an excellent course that helps to change people's lives, it's hard to get too cut up about it because I know that what we are selling is really high quality.
That's the big key right there is if you know your course works,
yes,
you know your offers are great, you're getting good reviews out of it, creating urgency or creating this open cart, closed cart situation or anything like that, it becomes like, well, but I'm helping people. Like, am I never supposed to offer this help? Like, am I only supposed to offer it
be like
once a quarter? Like, then that's
when you feel like it, you can join. Because the other thing is too, my particular students, the folks who I have made the course for, tend to be avoidant. They tend to be people who've been avoiding money, sometimes for 3 or 4 decades, right? Like I've had clients or students in my course who are in their 60s, right? So they have been working professionals for 40 years. And yet they've never actually managed to tackle this issue. So what I have learned about my particular students is if I don't give them a deadline, they will never join the course.
Yeah.
Because they've already been successfully avoiding this for decades.
Right. I think that right there is the key, is knowing the kind of like back end behaviors of the people that you're trying to attract. So if they have been avoidant, like you're saying, then they are going to continue to avoid signing up for a webinar, even if that is the gateway to helping them solve this major issue. So some of your funnel has to address that and kind of naturally circumvent that avoid, right?
Yes.
So walk me through this a little bit more. You have a couple of different lead magnets that are given. They get a few days to digest it, like you said, and then the emails start about, hey, come to this webinar. And they know that this is an on-demand webinar. It's not live. It's not a gimmick that we think you're live, and they can watch it at their leisure, but it is kind of this, hey, you have 5 days to do this.
Well, and this is the interesting thing in terms of funnels and what we've experimented with and what works and what doesn't. So the webinar, the way that it's set up, is kind of a faux live setup. And that has really bothered me because I'm like, oh, it feels really deceptive. Like Susan from Wisconsin is stressing out because she has to take care of her grandkid and she feels bad. She feels like I'm going to be there and she's letting me down. I feel bad that Susan feels bad. So there's been over the years this kind of like, oh, okay, can we tweak this part of it? But the interesting thing is when we tweaked our funnel to say, okay, you have 5 days to take all the actions. We tweaked our funnel at one point to say, we're giving you a deadline because we know you've been avoiding this for years. This is why we're giving you a deadline. So very clear about that. You have 5 days to watch this webinar and join us in the course. 5 days to do all the things. people didn't watch the webinar. Which means because they didn't watch the webinar, they didn't actually get to have that hour of education from me, and they didn't get a feel for what I do. They didn't actually learn anything about the course. They don't even know what they're saying no to. And then they just didn't join. Right. And so like, this is like, I tried to put the urgency kind of further, not further down the funnel, but be more transparent about like, I'm giving you 5 days, but you choose what you do and when you do it. And I've learned that my people don't do that either. So this very interesting thing in terms of, again, your specific people and what makes them tick is I have found with my students, they tend to be, they're therapists and health practitioners. So they're already like very caring, caregiving people. Many of them are also parents. They might also be caring for their own parents, right? They're sandwich generation. They are so freaking busy that if you don't actually give them a reason to put something in their calendar at a specific time, they will never do it. So I do still have, tried to switch away from this model, ended up having to go back to it. I do still have it. So like, Virginia, when you go to look at the webinar page, you will pick a day and time, and the webinar plays for you at that day and time. So it's very much like it's in your calendar. You get a reminder, hey, your webinar is happening in half an hour. Okay, join now, to actually give people the prompts to take that action. Because I think there's so much friction around even that step of watching a video that people will find a reason to be like, oh, I'm going to do it later. Yeah, no, I'll do it Saturday. I'll do it after my work week. But they won't. So we do have, like in the video itself, I don't pretend to be live. Like, oh, hey, we've got so many people here. So great. Like I don't do that kind of thing. And I think the video, I'm trying to remember now because I've filmed so many versions of it over the years. But I think transparent in it that like, this webinar, is going to walk you through these things. Without leaning into the live thing. Because I remember the first time I watched what I thought was a live webinar and realized it was Evergreen. And then I saw the time on his desktop clock and I was like, what the heck? I've been duped. It felt really slimy. So being more clear of like, this is your time to watch the webinar. And then that, then you'll have time for you to join the course. But it's a tricky line to walk, frankly, when your people are avoiding what you're talking about like the plague.
Well, and I think all financial professionals face that to a certain extent. People initially raise their hand because they do want help, but then they're just going to continue to put it off and avoid and like soccer tonight and,
That's it. And I'm thinking about my own life right now. Like I reached out to my lawyer to say, hey, I think I need to put more about my corporation in my will. I might need a corporate will. She replied, was like, oh yeah, I could do that for you. It's going to be minimum $2,000. I was like, I haven't replied to her email. It's been like 2 weeks. I do need a corporate will. I really need that. Like if I die tomorrow, it's going to be a pain in the butt for my partner to get access to the corporation, right? But it's like, I can answer her at any time. I could answer her in a year if I want, right? And so without that urgency, something that is like not very fun and expensive is very tempting to avoid.
And have you experimented with different lead magnet styles? Or is everything that you offer a video, or is everything a PDF, or is there a free email course? Have you experimented with those? I'm curious what's working for you right now.
Yeah, so we do PDFs, and we also do like short mini courses. So, they actually sign up for a course in Teachable that has, 3 or 4 separate videos with a workbook. We've done that. And then we've also done actually other like live webinars that have a time for them to watch a 1-hour webinar with a workbook. So I see those as kind of a spectrum of like light, like a little snack, a little PDF that you read and you're like, oh, I get that. You give them a quick win, to things that are meatier that really give them a taste of what it's like to work with me. And I have found that generally speaking, the meatier experiences tend to do more for our audience. The podcast has also changed things though. So, we can talk about that as we get more into the podcast. But again, because my people are avoidant, once they actually step in and have a more fulsome experience of getting help and they realize like, oh, this isn't so bad, I find that gives them momentum to keep going. But there is a lot of hesitation and a lot of friction in the beginning of the process, and a lot that they don't know. And so I have found that giving them, more fulsome experiences, because we also do launches in addition to our Evergreen funnel. And I see that as a kind of opt-in. It's like an upfront experience that's free. And I do a 4-day workshop series on money shame where they show up every day for an hour learning and talking about money shame and like people cry, like it's a very depthful conversation that we have. But my people, I find, need that level of connection to be like, okay, this is worth it. I can do this. I can trust this person. It's a way for me to earn their trust because the work I'm asking them to do is vulnerable work. And for some of them, it's going to be very difficult work. So they also need to know that I'm the right person. So giving them a good experience, a real taste of what it's like to work with me really does help get people. It also takes people sometimes from cold to hot. Like people will come in, just sign up from a Facebook ad for that event. And like 4 days later, they've given me, $2,000 US to work together. So that I found, again, for my people, they need more depth to be ready to do work with me, generally speaking.
Well, and I hope that the financial professionals listening are thinking about, oh, okay, so what can I glean from, how the back end of your business works at Money Nuts and Bolts, but then also, okay, if I have someone that has come to me for, let's say, investment advice, but as I'm gathering information about their situation, I'm seeing that they really need some guidance on how to run their business finances. You're this perfect referral that's sitting there. So I'm just hoping that like all of those things are firing in anyone who's listening, not only for themselves, if they need guidance, but then also think about your clients and what you're seeing in their books and numbers, what they need. You've been so transparent about your course and what's working in the back end and how you're getting people into your course. But of course, you have this amazing podcast and I would love to hear about it.
Sure. Yeah. So we started the podcast, I think it was 3 years ago now. I thought it was only 2. And then recently I had a like, oh, wow, look at that. It might have even been 2021. It's flying by. And so my greatest regret is that I started it later than I should have. Like once I started it, I was like, oh my gosh, why wasn't I doing this from the beginning? Because I personally love podcasts and I love more depthful conversations. And so we started the podcast, I believe it's 2021. Don't quote me, but that feels right-ish. And we work in seasons, which also gives us a little break. So we do 12 episodes at a time. And then my team gets like a 4 to 6 week break between seasons. But it has definitely been a game changer for our business in terms of being able to get out like really great quality conversations that I would be having anyways, right? Like conversations that I enjoy so deeply, and then putting them out there and having folks in our audience be able to enjoy that conversation 3 years later has been such a gift to our business. And when I look at our surveys for new students who join our courses, almost invariably now they identify as podcast listeners.
There you go. That's awesome. Because I agree. That's what we're all looking for is like, how do I break down these barriers as fast as possible so that this person actually trusts me to help them with what I say I'm going to help them with. And through webinars, freebies, the podcast, like these are all additional layers and steps where they can find us, follow us, see our face, hear our voice. That's going to be a super important way to establish trust for mass majority of the audience these days. How do you balance that feeling of like having to do it all? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, let me create a webinar. Let me continue the podcast or start one if I don't have one. I need some lead magnets that are driving. Like, it's so easy to get overwhelmed. I know you've built this over time. Could you walk us through almost like the sequence of events or what you would, if you went back in time, what the sequence of events might have been if you had to redo it?
Interesting. I don't think I would do it different. So that's also kind of nice to think about. Yeah. So I have no fear of delegating and getting help. So that's a little bit different than many folks that I work with who kind of still have that. And I say still because I think I used to, but I somehow moved past this like, only I can do it. Nobody can write an email like I can write an email. Like, nobody can do Canva graphics like I can do Canva graphics. That's not true. I'm not good at Canva, but that kind of thing, right? Like I think that a lot of us do get in our own way in terms of getting the help that we need and getting other people who might even have great gifts that we don't have on our team. So going back, I mean, this business itself, really my partner, like my spouse, has been in it with me from the beginning, which is kind of interesting because he's always behind the scenes. Only in the last year have we actually brought him kind of to the front of the scenes. Like he actually now comes into our group practice course because the tool that we have, he built the architecture of that tool. So he helps our students. And one of my students referred to him recently as a coach. She was like, my coaching session with Rodrigo was so amazing. And I was telling my best friend, and I was like, look at that. Rodrigo does coaching. I didn't even know. He's a politician is what his actual, like, he's a part-time municipal politician. Part-time, he works for me behind the scenes. But he really helped me from the very beginning to build everything, right? So when we built Money Skills for Therapists, we built it, the two of us, 1 week at a time. I sold it first, built it as I went. And it's like I would finish a coaching call with our students, basically not even close the laptop. I still need the laptop. Close the call and then look at him and be like, okay, we need to make this, go. And so having that other person from the beginning has been a huge, huge gift. Because also where I can sometimes maybe tend to get in my own way, he's a very sparky, competent, smart, high energy ADHD person who can just go, right? Like he can just dive into a thing and do it right away. Whereas I tend to be, more thoughtful, more slow. So between the two of us, there's a good balance. So from the beginning, he's been my kind of like tech build out guy. He does our websites. I'll come up with an idea for a tool. We'll talk it through. He'll make the architecture of that tool. I'll tell him to make XYZ changes. He tweaks it. So I'm really, really lucky to have a spouse I can work with because I know that statistically that's very rare. Most people could not work with their partner day in, day out. I've talked about that with some, people I know. My massage therapist was like, I could not work with my husband. Like we need time apart. We can't be together all the time. But yeah, so from the beginning, I've had that complementary skill set on board with me. But I have hired basically always as soon as I'm able to hire, I hire something out. So I probably grew my team a little too big. I actually am just going through a team contraction right now where I've actually gotten rid of a role in my business that I was like, I think our business has gotten a bit too big. Like we're over teamed. So I'm playing with this right now, a little bit of tweaking. But we have 5 to 6 team members, each in their zone of genius. And I am a huge believer in when you have the capacity to bring in somebody who loves an area, bringing in somebody to do that thing. So for instance, I hate marketing. I'm always confused when people like marketing. Like I'm like, you like marketing? It's like, are you safe? Like blink twice if you need help. Like that's how I feel about marketing. So, we used to have a role in our business that was our operations and marketing coordinator. Then as our business grew and the operations side got bigger, we now hired like a full-time marketing person. And she's on mat leave right now, but she helped us when we went to go do a booth at the American Counseling Association. I like tapped her in for, like a week to help us come up with a strategy because she loves marketing, right? And having people in your corner who have gifts and talents and passion for the things that you're like, oh my God, I would rather like shoot myself in the foot than like check emails, I have learned is a great, great help. And I notice that now that I have like slimmed down my team a little bit and I'm back at the inbox, I'm like, oh no, I forgot how much I hate the inbox, but that's because I've given myself the gift of having support to get folks into those roles. So yeah, my team has grown gradually over the year. Like I feel like we kind of add 1 team member a year has been our pacing till we got up to this like, team size of 6. So I have, I always have somebody coaching with me in my courses. So currently we have, Diane as our coach, who was one of my students who did a couple programs with me and then applied to work with me. And she's, really been growing in that role. And she does booths with me at like trade show booths. We have like a tech role. We have our podcast manager who is an external contractor. We have our marketing role. We have like our admin operations role, which like currently is on my plate. So, and I understand these as distinct parts of the business, which also helps me think about how to get help with them.
That is really a cool look into how you've built your team and what everyone does and how to segment all the things that go into building a business. I think that's the tough part. Sometimes I read something the other day that was like, don't delegate tasks, delegate the responsibility. So I loved that. And I've even gone through, we've had as many as 10 team members before. We've definitely slimmed down from that. Things are a little tighter now, a little slower on the production side, which is fine because it's also that breath to like step back and go, okay, like what's working, what's not, like what should I do? And you need, it's not instability or, fluctuation, because that, of course, you would love if your business just grew and grew and grew and grew. But in that mode of operation, you have no time to think. You're hiring, you're fixing, you're, establishing, okay, this program will work for this. And you're kind of running as fast as you can to fix everything, to do everything everyone needs, and to serve all the clients for all the things that they need. So in a weird way, a slower time is a blessing, even though it might not feel like that initially.
Yeah, there's all these seasons in business, right? And I would say right now, one of my coaches said to me yesterday that I've gone from sustain to startup by making the specific team changes that I've made. Like suddenly I'm like, okay, wow, ooh, what do we have here? What is there to do? Which is painful, but also is really clarifying. Now I'm going to be really clear on what are we doing and like what are our procedures for these things? Because also, I think the downside of my management style is I am the opposite of a micromanager. I'm like, I trust you. You got this. This is great. And that works great. But also then sometimes I lose track of like, what is our procedure for this? And like, wait, are we doing things we don't even need to do? Like have tasks turn into time sucks that if I was aware of them, I would actually be like, oh, I don't want you doing that. Right. But when your business gets big enough, you're not touching all the things anymore. And so I see it as I'm going through a season right now in my business of clarifying and, kind of paring down, streamlining, reassessing things. And it hurts. It's painful. Like it's, it's painful on so many levels, like in a personnel, like relationship level, it's painful to make those calls and it's painful to pick up tasks. Like right now at this very second, I feel like there's about 100 tasks up in the air around me. They're going to hit the ground at different times. Some of them I'll catch, some of them I won't. Some are important, some are not. So there is this like intensity to it. And I was just chatting with my business bestie before I got on this podcast. And she was like, this is chaos. You needed a little chaos. Like she was like, you had a really stable year last year. And now you're in a little bit of chaos, which is like dynamic, right? Great things can come out of chaos. And great things can come out of just having to like refine and clarify, like when you can't do as much. It makes me think about, I've heard folks with disabilities talk about this, where it's like, when you can't do everything, it becomes really clear what's actually important, right? Because you can't just run around like when you become, if you get Lyme disease or, you have to actually be clear on like what actually matters to me. And I think right now, this is going to be clarifying for me because I actually can't do everything. So like, what does our business actually need and what can we let go of?
Well, and with that, talk to me about the podcast. Talk to me about decisions that you've made within the podcast, maybe around just doing audio versus video, or, what are some things that you've faced with the podcast journey itself?
Yeah. Well, I mean, video is an interesting topic because it's something that I'm not resolved on. So we do record video for our podcast. Mostly it's me drinking a lot of tea. I've worked really hard in this conversation with you, Virginia, not to drink so much tea. But all I can think about right now is my tea, which is sitting within arm's reach. Because it doesn't make for great video, But our podcast manager is really insistent, like we have to be on YouTube. Like we can't be left behind. YouTube is like eating the podcast space. If we're not there, we're not going to, have a market share, I think is the language she wouldn't use, but that's kind of the idea. I still am not convinced. I'm still not convinced because like, I'm a big fan of Cal Newport and kind of this thinking of really like depth, clarity, like not getting caught up in a lot of noise. And I know that my audience really values thoughtfulness and depthful conversations. And the intimacy of podcasting is a beautiful thing. And you don't get that intimacy from watching it on YouTube. I believe that to my bones. So especially when it's not great audio, right? Like right now, my face is a little washed out. There's sun bouncing off the brick house next to me. right? Like I've kind of rebelled against it, I think, where like I could invest in like in a gorgeous video setup, but I'm like, it's not what I want. I love audio. So we are, as my podcast manager says it, we show up on YouTube. We do not show off. So, so far, I feel like I have literally no proof that it has done anything positive for our business. But I think we're kind of there out of this, like, would it be a mistake not to be? So that's one area where, it's still undecided for me. But other decisions that we've made, around the podcast is having seasons, like I mentioned earlier. I tend to have a team that has people who like are higher sensitivity, more like emotionally intelligent people, and emotionally intelligent people get sleepy. It's kind of one of our things. So I have set up seasons because that tends to work more with who tends to be on my team, that it's nice to have a break between seasons. So those 12 episode seasons we've been doing, we've played with second episodes in the week. So doing short Friday Q&A episodes where, listeners and audience members send in questions and we answer those. Coming into this season of my business, very specifically this quarter, we've identified this as our best quarter to sell our courses because it's the time that most people are most ready to take action. So I've cut back on those second episodes because I was like, you know what? Those don't actually sell courses for us. And it's a lot more work for our team. It doubles the amount of work on our podcast administrator's plate, and it doubles the amount of work on our podcast manager's plate. And like, we don't need to do that. So we've started making some more strategic decisions around how much energy we're putting into the podcast and when. So I'll probably bring back those Q&A episodes in the next season, but it's actually been a huge relief to my team to not have them on our plates this quarter. So that's been something to experiment too, of like, and do people even miss them? Who knows? That's always an interesting thing too, of like, sometimes you don't know if something's making an impact until you take it away.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, you're going to get some emails or some comments or something somewhere that's like, hey, I really liked those Q&A episodes. Where are those? Are you going to do those again? Or
yes.
And
yes.
And then you'll go, oh, someone cared.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yes.
But
yes.
So I love that you've chosen, for one, the seasons approach, but then also this flexible approach as to the Q&A episodes and whether we're doing 2 a week or not, because that's, in a circular way, the number one question I get is, how long should my episodes be and how often should I do them? And people probably hate this, but my answer is always, what do you want? What do you want to do? Right? In the core of what you're capable of and what you feel would work and what your people would want to hear from you. What do you want to do? There is no right or wrong. And even if you start on a certain path, let's say you started with weekly episodes, things happen in your life, things happen in your business. You can choose to increase that intensity or back it down a little bit and go every other week. Like, there are no rules. And so whether you decide, I'm going to do a solo episode once a month and it's only going to be 15 minutes and the rest are going to be interviews, like, whatever you choose to do, that's fine. As long as it's consistent, and that doesn't, consistent, that word, I kind of hate it. It needs to be sustainable for you and your business and your life. So if it's not sustainable, guess what? You're going to quit and you're going to feel like a failure because you couldn't keep up with this imagined train going 100 miles an hour. So if you just back it up and say, what's going to work for me? What is something I can do long term? Okay, I need to do seasons, or I need to take away this, section or portion of my episodes because I'm not sure if people even care about it. Well, they'll tell you if they care about it. They're going to let you know. So I appreciate your approach to it and just the journey that you've already been through. It really helps answer some of those questions for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I mean, it was an interesting decision to make to get rid of the second episodes because right now we're in the top 2% of podcasts in the world. And getting rid of that second episode might drop me out of the top 2%. Like, it's like, that's part of our metrics, right? So that was an interesting decision too, to be like, okay, the vanity metric is fun. It's nice to say to people. And I'm in the top 2% of podcasts in the world, because it makes it, when I say that to people, the shorthand is, it's a real podcast and it doesn't suck. You should listen to it. Right? Like, I'm not actually saying like, I'm almost Joe Rogan, because that's not true. But when I said that, to when I was done at the ACA, the American Counseling Association conference, I said that to people in kind of like a cute, fun way, because it's like helps them understand like, oh, wow, cool. You've got like a real thing going. But yeah, we might drop out of that, with releasing less episodes. That's always part of that metric. So it's also making the decision, okay, what actually matters? And what actually matters is that I sell courses, that I'm a course business. I'm an education business, and I'm not a podcast business. We do have podcast sponsors, but by and large, we found that, below a certain dollar amount, it's just not worth it. The work is not worth it for my team. So we've also made those decisions, like experimenting with advertising with partners who we love, and then being like, you know what, this isn't worth $500 for all the work that it makes for us. And they're like, yeah, it's not really working for us either. And we're like, great, love you, stay in touch. So we've also done some of that, of playing with ways to monetize the podcast, and then realizing, no, the way that we monetize the podcast is by selling our $2,000 and $6,000 courses. That is what the business sells. That is where we know we actually deliver real value to people. So there's been a little bit of that too, of like getting a little maybe distracted or confused of like, oh, I'm a podcaster, I need sponsors. And then it's like, no, I'm a business. And the podcast is a way to help folks understand if they want to work with me or not. I'm not actually looking to get, a Helix mattress sponsorship. That's not going to happen for me, right? But I am looking to get the right people into my program so I can help them change their financial lives. That's actually the purpose of the podcast.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I will talk with, let's say, a virtual CFO who wants to start a podcast, and their like second or third question to me is, okay, how do I get sponsors? And I'm like, okay, back up the truck, because the point is for you to drive customers into your business, to your services. I don't think she had a course. But just that's one example. I get that all the time. And so again, not just focusing on that sustainability question we talked about earlier, but the purpose, the core purpose of why you're launching a show, why you want to record conversations, and formatting your show, formatting your call to action, and your even just approach to how often you do your show, the style of it, who you're going to have on, all of these things for your purpose for your show. So like you said, a lot of times it doesn't even make sense to have a sponsor. A lot of times your business is the sponsor of your show. And it always cracks me up as well in the newsletter space when you get a newsletter from someone and it says like, this newsletter is sponsored by me. It's like, yes, because the purpose of nurturing your email list is to get people to sign up for your course, your service, your business, like whatever it is that you offer. I think that gets muddled sometimes.
It gets lost. And I think a lot of it is, the big podcasts that we think about, they do have sponsors because they're a podcast business. They're a media company. And media companies make money by having advertisers, right? That's how television, shows make money. That's how different websites make money. So most of us, folks listening to this podcast, we're not media companies. We're business owners. I think about my podcast as kind of a middle of funnel, middle to bottom of funnel. Because if somebody gets into my world, however they do that, whether they come to a workshop that I facilitate and they get one of my opt-ins, or whether they hear about me from somebody else, once they get onto my email list, they get a podcast email from me every week. And once they start listening to my podcast, I find for the right people, it slides them right down the funnel, right? Because once they've listened to me talk for 8 to 10 to 20 hours, they know if they like me or not. Which I also want them to know if they like me or not, because something that has been an evolution for me in the business over the last 6 years is being really comfortable with the fact that lots of people don't like me. Nobody is for everybody, right? And so if you are going to invest $2,000 or $6,000 to work with me, I want to make sure that you actually like me and you think it's okay that I swear and you find my jokes funny. Because if you don't, we're probably not going to have fun together. And that's going to be a barrier to you learning, right? And so I have found the podcast is the best way for also folks to vet themselves and decide, do I want to actually spend time and money on this person, or are they not for me? So I think almost nothing is better at helping somebody to figure that out than a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So that trust factor, and then also just, do I like you? Do I want to work with you? Do I trust you? Like all of these questions, I think, are answered through podcasting. That's why I like it. And that was my experience too, was like I found people I wanted to work with and advice that I wanted to follow because I listened to them week after week. And that trust, like, that feeling that they know what they're doing is, it's all developing that trust. So with that being said, is there anything specific you do with your podcast that you feel really funnels them in? Like, a specific call to action, or do you put anything specific in your show notes, or what have you tweaked over the years to really make that podcast funnel work?
Yeah. So I do calls to action to watch the webinar, right? So something that I've started doing more at the end, especially now that I've realized, okay, sponsors are not where it's at. I'm the sponsor. I have a little spiel that I give at the end, which is, if you would like to work with me, if you're curious about working with me, there's 2 ways to do that. I give a little rundown on the 2 courses because that's also an education piece for my audience, because the group practice course has only been around for 2 years. Some people don't know it exists, right? And so like part of what I'm also helping them do is understand I have 2 doors. Which door is for you? So you even like have awareness of what your next steps could possibly be. And so I direct them towards links in the show notes. And I say, if you want to learn more about money skills for therapists, if you're a solo practitioner, click on the link to watch the masterclass. You can think about that like my intake, get a sense of me, learn about the biggest mistakes therapists make. I have my spiel, but I frame it as like, this is my intake. Like you are watching this to see if you like me. And that is your, that'll be your invitation to join the course. If you're interested in money skills for group practice owners, give me a little group practice owner spiel about financial leadership, then get on the wait list, because that's a course that I run cohorted. So I only run that course once or twice a year. It's a bigger course and it's a larger investment. It's a smaller group, all of that stuff. So what I'm really trying to get into my listeners' brains is just understanding how to even work with me. So that if in the future they're like, okay, I'm ready. And they'll be like, oh yeah, that money lady. Sometimes people call me the money lady. I don't love it, but they're like, oh yeah, that money lady, she has that course and she has the 2 courses, but I need this one. I just want them to know that, right? Because sometimes people just have no idea what you're even selling if you don't talk about it.
Exactly. So that's kind of where I was going. I want people listening to realize, like, you have to talk about your offer.
You have to.
They have no idea what you do.
No.
Or how you can help them, even if they know, like, and trust you all day and they love the conversations, they're gonna just sit there and do nothing unless
they don't know what to do.
Yeah, you've got to invite them in and tell them.
Yes.
So
like selling is helping. And that's a phrase that I feel like at first I might have been, suspicious of. My dad was a salesman, and I had a lot of suspicions about sales. That could be a whole other episode. Not for this podcast, though. I had, I think, a lot of discomfort at first around selling. And now I realize, as I said earlier, our course is so valuable. It changes people's lives. Like, we offer amazing service to our students. I know what's out there in terms of online courses. And I know that, like, my team shows up so much more, like, wholeheartedly and present. Like, just the quality of care that our students get is so high. So I have no reservations about telling people that that's there. And if it's for them, I want them to join. And if it's not for them, I don't want them to join, which is also where the podcast is great, because they're going to discern that. But yeah, if you don't tell them about it, they have no idea what to do, and they're never going to get the actual help that you give, which is the help that you give through your actual service you provide.
Absolutely. Thank you. I feel like you've answered a lot of the questions that I get often just through conversation, just through talking through what you do and how you do it. So where can we listen to Money Skills for Therapists, and how can we find it and follow you? And if financial professionals listening that may want to refer people to you or partner with you, but what's the best way?
My website, moneynutsandbolts.com. That's the name of my company. That's where you'll find our courses tab. You can see the 2 courses and those 2 doorways if folks want to learn more about the course for yourself or for your own clients. We have descriptions of the courses there and what we do. I'm on Instagram at moneynutsandbolts. And the podcast, I feel like I'm supposed to say, you can find it wherever you find your podcasts. That's like, we're contractually obligated, right, as podcasters to say that. But yeah, we're on all the platforms. We also do have the podcast on the website, but I know most folks prefer to listen on iTunes or Spotify. So you can find us in all the podcasting places. Money Skills for Therapists podcast.
Thank you so much for sharing so many details about the back end of your business and your funnels and how you got here and the podcast, and just, I really appreciate the time and the energy that you've shared with us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Virginia. It's been really fun.